luxury is very much a laboratory. Think about all of the styles that you have seen on social media, for example, walk down a runway. How many of those are things you'd actually wear? Not a lot, right? Some of it is art. It's about a lab. It's about what are people going to adopt. That's the mentality that proves out all of these crazy ideas that we have about sustainability. I mentioned mushroom leather. That's happening. I believe it's Hermes that's looking into that right now. It's expensive to create those new technologies, but once they're proven, it's not expensive to adopt. So luxury has to provide the way, has to build the path, and then everybody else gets to follow after.
Welcome to Sustainability Transformations Podcast. Today, we are going to look at strategy, development, founder experience, and how sustainability enthusiasts we can learn from these bold ideas and to make a sustainable impact. Today, we are so pleased to have Brittany Hansen, who is a strategist, a founder, and a mom. Welcome once again, Brittany. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Enoch. I am thrilled to be here today. I would love to introduce myself. So I'm Brittany Hansen. I'm the Chief Discovery Officer at a company called Vision, where we work to help companies tell their stories with transparency and meaning and provide light and data in places that traditionally go dark. I guess a person of duality in that I love sustainability, but I also love luxury. I play the harp. I also compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a member of a car club. Um, and I'm just the softest mom that you'll ever meet. I've raised special needs children, and so I love building in places where duality is key. I feel like it makes us more well-rounded as humans.
That's a wide spectrum of the main work experience at the day-to-day mom and life experience. So thanks for sharing that with us. So in your own words, who is Brittany Hansen today?
Today, I am a much more confident person than I was probably 10 years ago. Today, I love strategy, and I think that's actually been a part of me for my whole life. I'm also standing at a crossroads. My oldest son is getting ready to graduate. And I'm traveling a lot more internationally for work. I am working to bring a unique perspective both to sustainability and luxury and storytelling because the world is in a really pivotal different place now than it's ever been before. And so I love to amplify the voices that are working to change that.
That's great. Thanks. You've built a SaaS company. Um, you've talked about being a proud mom, which is lovely to see. But you skipped the VC route. So which part of your journey most shaped your leadership style?
Absolutely, it did. So I did co-found and create this SaaS company. I have a co-founder. Her name is Andrea. She's amazing. And not going the VC route absolutely changed how we led our company because it meant that we had to be so scrappy in the beginning. Every dime that we spent mattered greatly. Every person that we brought on our team had to be a multifaceted, multi-talented individual who was ready to wear lots of hats. And it bred a level of creativity that I'm not sure we would have had otherwise because we had to figure out how to meet all of the needs on just a shoestring budget. And so, what it has meant is that precision and clarity became very, very important to us. There was not room for big mistakes. That's not to say we didn't make any mistakes, but we didn't have room to make lots of mistakes, and we didn't have room to not learn from the mistakes that we made. We've become very, very precise. We've become very, very clear, and we've become highly caring in the way that we take care of our team members because we can't afford to lose anyone. They need to believe in the mission that we have at the same level that we do. They need to be able to execute with integrity, and that means they have to be at their best. So we have a very small team who is very dedicated to what we do, and we're very dedicated to them. We intermingle our lives in ways that typically you wouldn't in business because we love them so much and we want to be there to support.
That's impressive. So, if I could expand on the clarity which you mentioned, which is so important, especially now with AI and ChatGPT in the last 2 years, there is a lot more content, for example, on LinkedIn and other social media. So, it's becoming more and more information and there's less clarity. I'm curious to know from a sustainability company or leader, are some of the key things that helped you gain that early clarity without 12 months, 18 months, 2 years down the line to get that clarity, but as early as possible? Is there any tips you can share?
Absolutely. That's a great question. The first is, and I talk about this a lot, communication is key. So if it takes 2 hours to have a meeting, take the 2 hours instead of the hour and make sure that everybody's asking the questions that they have. Buy in is not as important, although in the end, before you execute, it is. In the beginning, buy in is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you're getting everybody's opinions, everybody's viewpoint, so that you can actually make an educated decision. Because as a founder, I'm aware I'm not the smartest person in the room. I hired the people that I hired because I believe in them. And so if I bring them onto the company and then I don't make a space for them, I don't make sure they feel safe to communicate, and I don't listen to their opinions, I'm undercutting myself. So what has become most important to us is that communication, and that brings clarity. One of our most deep values as a company, and something we strive to bring to customers as well, is clear communication. Companies both publicly and internally get all tangled up in what they're trying to say and what they're trying to do, and they don't clearly communicate. They don't give people the opportunity to speak to them. They don't have good feedback loops. um, and those things are important, and that's really hard for a startup in the beginning because you don't have data to base your decisions on. In the beginning of a startup, you have highly qualified opinions and gut beliefs, so you have to start gathering data as quickly as you can. But in that space, before you have data, meaningful data, you must bring in your team, you must listen to everyone, and then you have to be ready to pivot quickly to match the data. So those are the things I would tell a company: communicate, and then pivot quick.
Getting the feedback loop, how, as founders within sustainability space, whether a renewable company or managing the sustainability environment and social aspect of organizations, you mentioned about not necessarily getting a buy-in. So how do leaders manage that, getting the feedback, but not necessarily that initial feedback being shown in the decision making?
Yeah, I think so. So we gather the feedback, and then I said buy-in isn't important in the beginning. That's not in the beginning of the conversations. Buy-in is not important. By the time you execute, buy-in is important. So what we typically talk about is, everybody bring your opinions. Everybody come and tell us exactly what you think. We're going to talk about it. We're going to write down in the meeting notes everything everyone said, and then we're going to move forward with a decision. And if you're not at this point in full buy-in with that decision, are you at a point that you feel comfortable that we can move forward? We call it strong opinions, loosely held. Come with your opinions and then be willing to hold multiple truths at once, to get experimental and curious, to try something that maybe wouldn't be the thing that you would choose if you were just on your own. And then once we've executed, we have really quick feedback loops. We meet as an executive team and as a leadership team at least once a week so we can review, how are things going? Do we feel good about this? What's the feedback we're getting from the public? What do the data numbers show us? So that we can do that second part that I was talking about, which is pivot quickly. Because maybe somebody was wrong. Maybe that thing we all thought was right, and this happens so often in business, needs tweaked a little bit or a lot to make it work the way that we want it to. So have everybody bring their opinions, but have people who are not so rigid that if we don't go specifically with their idea, that we can't move forward. Many, many years ago, we had a mentor who told us that if you're choosing between A and B, the answer is likely always C. Typically, it's a commingling of all of the ideas. And so that's really what we're trying to build as a company: is bring all of your ideas, let's mesh it together into something it never would have been before, and then let's execute. And that's the easiest way to get buy-in too, and easily the best way to get creativity in your company is to marry everybody's ideas to the best of your ability and see what happens.
That's useful insight. With choosing between A and B can be seen from a sustainability field. There are some areas the popular belief might be um, either or, and as you said, the A or B. I am adapting that either or to sometimes it's not either or, but both sides can actually be right. And society and sustainability can make it look too simplistic as just choosing between A and B or either or. So I really resonate
Absolutely.
with that.
Sustainability has a way of dividing people a little bit, be like, you're either sustainable or you're not. And this is something I talk about a lot. It's actually a spectrum, right? Most companies cannot be fully green tomorrow. So we have to be willing to move on that scale and to hopefully become more and more green. But most often it's not black or white, it's somewhere in the middle. It's gray somewhere.
Yeah. So while you were building the in a non-coastal tech hub, what are some of the most underrated lessons you've learned through the process?
That is a really great question. For me, the idea that innovation actually has to work, not just sound really impressive. I've worked with a lot of people. I've had fantastic mentors and peer mentors, and there are a lot of great ideas that come out all the time. Some of them don't solve real problems, and some of them, once they're released into the real world, don't actually matter that much. We live in a society where we're hungry to solve problems and we're excited to be creative and we're excited to execute. And I think especially in America, we have a strong entrepreneurial spirit where we're like, I want to do this. And sometimes we don't slow down enough to ask, who does this benefit? What problem does this actually solve? And is it a problem that people actually want solved? Innovation, the kind of innovation that belongs to the world, the kind of innovation that changes humanity has to work. It has to have real purpose behind it. And then we have to be able to pivot. So I like to bring up the idea of straws when we talk about this. Straws get talked about a lot when we talk about eco-conscious, eco-friendly kinds of things. And initially, we learned that plastic straws were really bad for the environment, and dozens, if not more, companies came out with ideas for how we solve the straw problem, and almost none of them worked. Paper straws were full of PFAs, and they dissolved really quickly in your drink, and so it actually wasn't really better for the environment. And stainless steel straws answered a lot of problems, but you have to carry them with you, and they're difficult to clean. Bamboo straws, I mean, that kind of works, but again, you have to be able to carry it with you, or they're very expensive for companies to be able to stock. So what happened is we all rushed to answer a question without asking ourselves if our answer really worked. And so the answers, a lot of them weren't truly innovative. That's what being in a startup has taught me, is to bring real innovation to the world and to make sure it actually works, that you're actually executing is an undervalued thing that matters an awful lot.
With the sustainability space, perhaps expanding on that things that actually works. Businesses generally hire or expect the experienced, typically the established businesses, when they're experienced. But is it safe to say that sometimes that safety experience may hinder the opportunity to maybe think outside the box, try new things? So how do business leaders, sustainability leaders or businesses that are making decisions juggle that we can't afford to make mistakes, which may be costly, whether startup or not, but also combining that experience with being adaptable in order to be more innovative?
So that is a really great question. And I think so. I need to potentially fix something I said earlier. It's not that you can't afford to make mistakes, it's that you can't afford not to learn from your mistakes. The fail fast mentality is important. Like, break it and then fix it quickly. My co-founder likes to say that mistakes are what we pay to learn. And if you do it right, you get an Ivy League education. You make lots of mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. What happens is that in large corporations, so this is typically what it's kind of what you were talking about, they get bloated, they get real comfortable being safe, and innovation stops because it takes too long to make a change, and everybody wants to be safe in their position. They don't want to make any mistakes. So we get real middle of the road kind of garbage, sort of who does this help, not real innovation for our conversation earlier. So what has to happen inside of startup culture is we make lots of mistakes. We make them quickly. We try to make them as inexpensively as possible. And if they are expensive mistakes, then we work very quickly to fix it. And true startup culture, and this is something that I think women can help bring to technology, requires that we work with other founders and other people who are learning the same lessons that we're bringing. And in a collaborative effort, we say, here's the lesson I learned. Take it and do with it what you will, but hopefully it keeps you from having to pay as much for tuition as I have.
So how does empathy practically show up think we've touched on some of them, perhaps starting to explore the benefit and the value of empathy. How would you say shows up in your leadership or your team building as well?
So, empathy in leadership, I think, is one of the most important skills that you can have as a leader. People can feel empathy from you. It makes them feel safe. It helps them to understand that you can see things from their perspective. And so that safe environment that we were talking about that allows for innovation, that allows for people to fail and then quickly learn from it, all of that stems from empathy and the trust that they have that you experience real empathy. For me, I've always been highly empathetic. I had to learn how to lead with empathy and then make space for silence in conversations in an effort to save people from feeling uncomfortable. I used to tend to feel those silent spaces with conversation or with galvanizing, where like, you can do this, this is great. People need space for silence as they process. People need space for silence as they move through things. And so, giving space, I've learned, giving space in especially big conversations for silence is one of the best ways I can offer empathy because it says, I'm going to allow you the space that you need to process, to think through this, to talk to me about what you need. Silence is space. It's allowing space for people. It's allowing for existence. And it's truly that's one of the most important things I can offer people is a safe place to come and we can talk if you want, but if what you need is just to sit in silence and safety with someone for a moment, I can offer that too. Silence is healing, and it's in those moments when we have time to process and really gain new insight. So, innovation is married to empathy, and empathy is married to silence and safety.
Yeah, that's quite deep with the silence. Would you be able to give an example? And the reason for asking that is personally, as an engineer in fairly early part of my career, I discovered that because I was at the high end of the creativity, I wasn't a quick thinker, so to speak, and the education system and the workplace is about how quick you can give an answer off your feet. But I noticed, which it took me probably the hard way to realize that, I'm different where I can't just be the quick answer, but more a thoughtful answer and be comfortable with that. So that's where I'm curious to tease out if you've got any specific examples of how that silence and space,
Yeah.
hopefully that helps.
Absolutely, I do. So I have two. I will start with a personal one. So I mentioned that I'm a mom. My two oldest boys it's called Twice Exceptional. So they're on the autism spectrum and they're gifted. As their mom, I had to learn to give them processing time, especially with my second. And I'm not going to mention his name because moving fast and requiring something of him right away was a huge struggle for him. And he didn't know how to do that. And it would immediately send him into overdrive. And now all of his systems are trying to respond to me saying, we gotta get out the door. We gotta get our shoes on. Or more recently, we're having lots of philosophical conversations with him where we're talking about religion and what he wants to do with his life. And as a parent, you feel sense of urgency when there's a pause. When you're talking about something as serious about where your life is going or what you believe your values are. We have found that if we can give our son 20 or 30 minutes to process everything we've talked about, he will come back to the conversation with a level of depth and insight that is shocking for a 17-year-old boy. He just needs the time to process it. That's okay. In fact, that's incredibly valuable. If 20 minutes is going to make the difference in his success or failure, I will give him 20 minutes every time. On a professional level, we travel a lot in the beginning of our business, especially. And now we travel internationally, and you go on a road trip and you want to fill that silence and maximize your time, right? And have really great conversations. And all of that is wonderful. Something that my co-founder taught me is when we pause, even turning off the radio, which is something that's hard for me because I love music on a road trip. But when we give space for real silence, what happens in your mind is it starts processing on a different level because it's not using, right? It's not using all the distractions, scenery, conversation, and music, and your mind starts to process in a different way. And all of a sudden, you reach a flow state. And now there's something to talk about. And now you're playing off of each other because you gave silence 5 or 10 minutes to activate in your mind without filling it with everything. People need, and to your point, you're creative. That means it takes time to connect all the different spots in your brain. Given that time, you'll probably come up with something a lot cooler than somebody who had 30 seconds to process and was like, "Yes, let's run with this."
Yeah.
So, from a leadership perspective, from a parenting perspective, just from a life perspective, make sure that you're giving silence space in your life. You don't have to fill every moment of your life with noise. Noise is
Uh,
not valuable if it stops you from growing.
Within the tech space is well known to be male dominated, if I may use that term. But are women able to redefine these rules from the outside over time? I'm curious to know, as a woman who's been in that space, if you can share those insights, please.
Absolutely. So, structurally, yes, tech is male dominated. There's definitely more male leaders. There's actually fewer women in tech now than there was in the 80s. But we're starting to see, isn't that crazy? That's a crazy statistic, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You would think, yeah. Sorry,
And
go on.
the reason, oh, it's great. And here's the reason why there's fewer female tech leaders now. So women are having children a little bit later, and they're exiting companies at about the time they would be moving into leadership. So we're having children at 32, 35, 38. That's when you have enough experience to move into leadership in a company. So we're moving out, and then we're taking space to raise our children, and it's hard to come back in and move back into leadership. So yes, structurally it's a very male dominated. That's starting to shift, and I think the reason that that's valuable, and just so we're clear, I'm not bad mouthing men. I
No.
have lots of men who are great allies and who understand what I bring to the table. What is cool about women in technology is two things. One, women as a whole are able to hold multiple truths at once that people need. For instance, I'll use our company as an example. Information distribution is terrible right now, and people need to find ways for information that they can trust. Also, information is not available in enough languages. So most people don't have access to really good information. At least 20% of the US doesn't have access to good information. Those are two truths that, if held separately, are not as valuable as when you marry them. What if we could make a tech that gave everybody really great information and in the language that they need in the moment that they need it? Right? Typically, when we talk stereotypes, men are very good at executing on a single truth. Women are good at multiple truths. The other thing that women are good at, that place of clarity that we bring to technology, is that we realize that leadership doesn't require dominance so much as it requires discernment.
Okay.
And in a typical leadership role, dominance has been very important. You need to follow me, right? You need to get on board. You need to understand that I am the leader in this situation. And that mindset is shifting, and it's not only due to women. People like Simon Sinek, who talk about leaders eat last and sort of that mentality. That's more about discernment. But that's something that women are actively bringing to the table right now as we look for that around what matters the most in this moment. And that's another piece of being able to lead with empathy, is to be able to discern what a person needs in this moment. It's not always about respect. It's not always about getting in line. Sometimes it's about communicating with empathy and providing what's needed in that moment so everybody gets to be successful. So yes, yes, that's something that has gone on for a long time, but women are leading with context in new ways, and men often are making room for us at the table, which is something I love to see. I love to see allyship that's like, bring more voices to the table. What you have to say is valuable. And the other statistic that I'll give you that really blew my mind is women influence far more than 50 or 60% of purchasing decisions. In the United States, women influence about 80% of purchasing decisions. Now, that doesn't mean we make all of those purchases. It does mean that we influence all of those purchases. So for tech, which is a very expensive industry to be in, to not be able to speak to women in the way they want to be spoken to, they're taking a huge pay cut. They're costing themselves a lot of money. So there is a spot for us at the table, and it is incredibly important that we're there. And not just women, but lots of voices. We need diversity in a way it's not been seen before, because diversity is what creates true innovation and really brings people together.
The key phrase that sticks to mind from what you said is from dominance to discernment. Thanks for sharing that. Moving on to look at luxury, innovation, and sustainability. What draws you towards that intersection? And the reason for asking that, mainly, we have some voices within the sustainability, which tends to focus on the airline industry or private jets or other luxury. But I'm curious to know how you were able to draw that intersection.
Yeah, and you know what? You're right that there's still a significant amount of waste in a lot of places inside luxury. The reason that I'm interested in this intersection of luxury and sustainability is because so often luxury is what dictates our culture. That's why there's influencers and we care what they're doing, and luxury is like a pinnacle and it means success for a lot of people. So, because luxury dictates culture, if we're able to make sustainable choices aspirational in the same way that luxury is, we make sustainability the mindset that people are striving for. So many women want a Louis Vuitton bag, right? What if the same people were going, how do I, or it's glamorous to walk to work once a week, or I'm willing to pay for a bag, a regenerative leather bag made from mushrooms rather than from beef hide, or I'm willing to repurpose fashion in a meaningful way. Now it's aspirational, now it's cool, and now it's determining where we're moving as a culture because people are excited about it. It's not just like a buzzword or another chore we have to do. Like I have to remember to take my bags to the grocery store so I don't use more plastic. Now it's a cool thing to be seen doing. And ultimately that's how we get buy-in from humankind as a whole is, wow, this is aspirational, this is something I want to become, this is something that I want to do. Furthermore, luxury has the money to experiment with things. So your mom and pop grocery store that is barely meeting their margins, they can't bring in a new product that they don't know if it's going to sell. That happens up here, and then the ripples carry through to other people. We have to start where the money is because there's room to make that a laboratory. Then, once we have tried and true principles, we can take it other places. Luxury is very much a laboratory. Think about all of the styles that you have seen on social media, for example, walk down a runway. How many of those are things you'd actually wear? Not a lot, right? Some of it is art. It's about a lab. It's about what are people going to adopt. That's the mentality that proves out all of these crazy ideas that we have about sustainability. I mentioned mushroom leather. That's happening. I believe it's Hermes that's looking into that right now. It's expensive to create those new technologies, but once they're proven, it's not expensive to adopt. So luxury has to provide the way, has to build the path, and then everybody else gets to follow after. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I don't know much about the luxury and the fashion side, but from knowledge in electric vehicles, as an example, where early on it's expensive because only few people can afford it. But once more and more people are buying, then over time, I think the term which is used is the network effect. Once you have more people using it, then that network effect helps bring the cost down. So absolutely, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and those initial pieces like hydrogen cell batteries or electric cars, right? Very expensive. But now I think it's called Tito. There's an electric car company in Argentina that's making much more affordable electric cars because now the technology has moved forward enough that it's attainable. So it's an exciting thing to watch the world expand sustainability. That said, we do have to make it clear that there's a demand for it. With luxury airliners, it's like, it's so hard because they make their money that way. They can make it more economical by pouring in 1,000 more seats on an airplane, but who wants to go on a 16-hour plane ride squished into a ball? No one. But I also don't know that I need designer silk pajamas and a king size bed. So we have to reward companies as they make sustainable choices, and that doesn't necessarily mean shopping with them. If I cannot afford to spend $16,000 on a flight across the Atlantic, right? But when a company makes a really cool choice, I can talk about them on social media. I can tell my friends about it. I can tell other businesses. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in seeing. And as there's public outcry for that, businesses do follow because they are trying to meet the needs of their consumer.
Yeah, very key insights. In general, every business, every sector they know who their ideal customers are. And so, similarly for sustainability, based on those discussions we've had, the sustainability, whether tourism or electric vehicle or energy savings or material savings, different businesses will care based. So, for example, most manufacturing companies consume high amounts of energy. And so, when you talk to a manufacturing company and energy is at the top, they will care more than a finance company that may not have high amounts of energy consumption. And so I think sometimes it's not fair judging sustainability as if, or maybe sustainability enthusiasts may claim or may show that, oh, every company, every individual has to care about. That's the ideal state. But in practice, different sectors will care about which aspect. I've used the manufacturing and energy as an example. If you go into the general challenges around tariffs that is being talked about, some industries are worried about it because they have to pay the physical tariffs. And some industries, it will be a ripple effect down the line. It doesn't mean they don't care about tariff. So I think that's one of the key aspects I've discovered around sustainability where, yes, ideally, for example, the tariff example, yes, ideally, what every company to, care about it or worry about it, but there is always going to be levels of caring.
Of course, some of that is the spectrum that we were talking about earlier. So, when you think about, for instance, a chocolate company, right? There are 1,000 ways for them to be more sustainable and more eco-conscious. Is it in the farming of the cocoa beans? Is it in the way they process their chocolate? Is it whether or not they use child labor? Is it how they transport the beans once it's done? No company is going to be able to fix all of that at once. So, we have to be able to reward the ways that they do. And like you said, understand what is most important for that sector. Energy consumption is going to be used huge for everyone right now because of AI and that it's being utilized in so many different places. And we have to have huge computer banks in the middle of the desert, for all of that processing power. So energy consumption is going to be big for everyone. But you're absolutely right. But that it's in different industries, it means different things. In fashion, maybe it's regenerative leather, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's 1,000 things, right? And in maybe fintech or different other places, it's going to be about the amount of energy you consume. What matters, I think, first and foremost, is that it's top of mind for these companies, that they're thinking about ways that they can be more sustainable and that they're taking steps, even if they're baby steps. Take the steps because the first step towards change is always the most important, isn't it?
Absolutely. As there's a saying, a journey of 1,000 days begins from day one. You just have to start somewhere and build the momentum going forward. So, looking at the final segment around personal greats, jiu-jitsu and mindset, you compare jiu-jitsu to business. What does that metaphor teach us about resilience in life and in business?
I love this question. So, jujitsu is all about adaptability, breathing, and leverage. All of those things are important in business. Just because I'm small doesn't mean I'm not a powerful fighter. Just because I'm on the bottom now doesn't mean that in 3 seconds I can't be on the top. It's about learning how to plan, learning how to strategize, and figuring out, right? I'm in a bad situation this moment. How can I maneuver such that this is a benefit for me? Because there's always a way, right? A and B, it's always C. I don't have to tap in this moment. I don't have to give up. How can I make this work for me? I love jujitsu for that because I feel like it directly parallels business in so many ways. And it's a good reset for me too to get really physical after days of sitting at a computer and being super social, to just be in that situation where it's just about grit and determination. It's a good reset for me.
What's the next luxury or tech trend we should be watching for, in your opinion, the next, short term or maybe 5 years or so?
Regenerative design, I think, is going to be a big one. Digital experiences that go along with your luxury experiences. And then things that are coming down the pike that I think are really cool. So there's a company called, I think it's Atelier Tam Mam. They have a one dress initiative where they're designers, but they have people bring in fashion they already have and recreate it to be something new. I think there's real innovation in fields like that, that it's not just a new design and a new concept, it's how to make something better out of what you already have. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Coach is already doing like Recoach, where people send in their old Coach bags, they make something new and they resell them. That takes real artistry to take something that already existed and find the value in it and the beauty in it still. And I think we'll see a lot more of that moving forward as well.
What's your final message to business leaders in tech, sustainability leaders can learn, or to women within the luxury tech space?
So I would tell people you don't have to choose between softness and strength. Those things, those two truths are allowed to coexist and they're important. It's bringing empathy into things. And then I would tell you to be audacious about your vision for your company and be unapologetic about it, because what we're really looking for right now in the world, everybody needs beauty to inspire them, but we need beauty with backbone. Beauty that means something, beauty that accomplishes something. The world is often a really dark place right now. So the places that we can bring light and beauty, those matter. So make sure that you're doing it. If beauty is a smile at a stranger, do it. If beauty is artwork, amazing, right? But find the beauty and then translate it, bring it to other people. Beauty with a backbone always is going to be what my call to action is for people.
Okay, a huge thank you to Brittany. So, if people want to find more of your work, where can they find you, Brittany?
The easiest place to find me, and please do reach out, is on LinkedIn. I'm Brittany-A-Hansen on LinkedIn. You can also go, there are forms on our website that you could fill out if you are hoping to talk to me. We're Vision with three I's, so VIIISION.com. I'm always happy to talk to anyone. I love storytelling, I love strategy, and I love working with others. So please do reach out to me.
Right. I'll put those links in the description so you should be able to access it as you watch or listen to this. So, yeah, thanks, Brittany.
Thank you so much.